currently involved with the local AFAA chapter. Heavily involved with the fire alarm system. I'm going to talk about fire alarm systems, their applications in certain buildings, and also some of the impact of the new International Fire Code compared to the fire alarm systems. With that, please welcome to Tom.
Thanks, Al. When Al came up to me a couple of weeks ago and said, how would you like to be speaker at this month's meeting? I found a number of reasons that are very valid to get out of it. And then I sat and tried to think of some things that would be of interest across the board. And Al and I recently attended a presentation from the State Fire Marshal's office on internet. They call it the State Fire Code 2003 State Fire Code. It went through a lot of the changes that happened in the IBC and also the IS. And in going through the presentation, there were a lot of changes on the fire alarm side that impacted on the sprinkler side. And this is new in Minnesota because prior to that, in the uniform codes, there was never any connection of what you had to do fire alarm wise if you didn't sprinkle. Two departments were really quite stuck. If you didn't sprinkle a building, you pretty much just went to the occupants of the building and they told you what the fire alarm system was supposed to do. Now in the international codes, they actually have taken the fire alarm requirements and they've written them so that if in certain occupancies, certain buildings are sprinkled, then there's a backup on some of the fire alarm requirements. So I thought it might be interesting just to touch on some of those occupancies. And then Al also mentioned, he said, you know, I'm walking through buildings and I look at the fire alarm in a building. I can go down the road and same sort of building, same occupancy, same municipality, and the fire alarm system. You know, I don't see the same stuff in one building that I see in another building. And so why is it? And I'm going to try to touch on that just a little bit too. You know, it's a really answer that I'd have to be here probably for a day. You know, just go through a lot of the stuff that involves fire alarm design. But I thought it also might be interesting just to kind of go through some of that. Al, I brought some prints. Slide on the table. Take one of those. Pass them around. So this won't be extremely long. For those of you that are really involved in sprinklers, care less about fire alarm, this will be done before the no-nos wears off. Okay, this is what I went over just now. Some of the state fire code changes, primarily on the fire alarm side, and what that does the sprinkler side. And what this has a big impact is if you're doing any fire protection design for buildings, you need to know that if you're talking about sprinklers and you're looking at cost per square foot of putting in a sprinkler system, there's decisions and there's impacts now that if the building is sprinkled or not sprinkled. In the International Fire Code, Section 907 for a fire alarm system. Okay, and it's been completely rewritten. And what they did is they divided it into two main sections. And this never happened before because again, in the uniform codes, if you had existing buildings, you went back to Chapter 34. You looked at some of the verbiage back there. Now in 907, there's a complete description of new buildings. They break it down by occupancies. And then they get into existing buildings. They break it down by occupancies. These buildings. And so this is Section 907.2, maintaining for new. Section 907.3. The sections in 907.2 and 907.3 are fully divided by type of occupancy. And occupancy is really the hook for fire alarm design. This fire alarm design does not care about hazard. There's no such thing as ordinary, there's no such thing as light hazard and fire hydrants. You start with the occupancy. And the model building codes and the state amendments go through and they tell you for that occupancy requirements for fire alarm system. That's how a fire alarm system basically is. So we don't start with a hazard, we look at the occupancy. And then you go back and then see what the model code, in this case the International Fire Code, says for that classification of fire alarm. Then you go to the state amendments to see whether the state amendments have amended it at all. And then finally, you go to your local jurisdiction. Now, they've amended it. You've got that three-step process that you have to go through. For each section, there's a general. They tell you where it's required. Then they'll tell you what initiates it. The fire alarm system does three things. One, it detects a fire. Two, it notifies the occupants. Three, it holds the fire. Those are the three things that a fire alarm system does. Every fire alarm system does that. And initiation in the International Fire Code will tell you, based on that occupancy, where smoke detectors are required. And that's the initiation. And then notification. Those are the horns, the bells, and the sirens. There's a move in the international codes and also in Minnesota to get away from manual pull stations, which are those red things in the hallways that say fire on them, pull down on them. That's called manual activation of the fire. Move to get away from it. False alarms, primarily. Dealing with fire trucks, costs money to do that. And there's mines, again, I wasn't there for all these discussions, but from what I've heard from people that I think put together, they want to get away from manual pull stations. What they will do is they'll put a manual pull station in a constantly intended location somewhere in the building, so that if something happens, and either the alarm system has or has not gone off, there'll be a pull station somewhere, say at a desk or a security desk or somewhere. If you pull on that, then you'll get the fire trucks rolling. But the days of seeing pull stations up and down the corridors and in hallways of elementary schools and hospitals and like that. More user-friendly format. I'm not convinced of that yet. You know, I've only been working with it for less than 30 days, so it's going to take a while to get used to this new format because they claim that they set this up so that we can work with it. It's very slow. In the new Minnesota State Fire Code, with the adoption similar to NFPA 13, Fire Alarm Bible, which is NFPA 72, the 1999 edition got adopted. And that's a big jump, because we were using the 1993 for an awful long time. There's a lot of things in there that just needed to be brought up to this level.
Just for those of you who do this in St. Paul, we're adopting the State Fire Code in Michigan. This is what I recommend. 72 and 13.
That's great. That's great. The difference between 93 and 99 is quantum. That had to happen between 99 and 2002 is a smaller delta so it's more changes. But the state could not adopt the 99 edition because it wasn't even written by NFPA at the time it was started. Another change in the International Fire Codes is that heat detectors need not be provided in areas protected by an approved supervised automatic detector. So the days of going in and your kitchen and you wouldn't put a smoke detector in there, you know, because it'd be alarming all the time. Or a janitor's closet, put a heat detector in there because the smoke detector would get contaminated and it would false alarming. If the building is sprinkler, if there's a sprinkler head inside that room, then there's no requirement for putting a heat detector. Basically, the high codes consider the heat detector and the sprinkler head to be one of the same. Okay, I just briefly touched on this. You know, what's a fire alarm system? You've got devices in the building, initiation devices. And initiation devices will be your smoke detectors. That's a very common initiation device. Manual initiation devices are the manual pull stations I was talking about earlier. Those are going away. or you'll find whatever constantly intended location. That's manual, and that's the only type of manual activation. Supervisory camera devices. These are the water flow shutoff valves, that we're monitoring, and those are brought into the fire system. We'll talk more about that down the road. But those are brought in as a supervisory signal. And a lot of people think of fire alarm as an alarm or trouble. And for many, many years, that was the case. You had two types of signals, an alarm and a phone. A smoke detector went off, the whole station, that was an alarm. Bells rang, we got an alarm. Or you had a trouble. You shorted a wire or you opened up a circuit and a trouble light went on the panel. That was a trouble. For a long time, that was the case. But what they used to do is they used to take the water shut-off supervisory valves and they used to wire those in the same circuit as the water flow switch. The water flow switch would be a parallel connection, kind of electrical state, and the water shut-off valve would be wired in series with it. So if somebody closed the water valve, it would still come in as a trouble. You never knew what it was. You didn't know if it was a cut wire or you didn't know if somebody actually shut the water off. So now FDA came up with in '93 a supervisory signal. And a lot of the fire alarm panels now have that supervisory signal as part of the system. So you've got three signals. You've got an alarm. Alarm, everybody knows alarm. Supervisory is an off normal condition. You've got a water valve that's closed. It's an off normal condition. So anything that's not in its normal position would be a supervisory signal, and then you've got your troubles, which is the old troubles that everybody knows. There's three different types of signals. And then you have notification or strokes. So again, detect the fire, notify the occupants to get out of the building. And then lastly, transmit to the central station, you get the fire trucks. Those are the three things that you should get. Okay, I told you this is real simple. When the code sections say that a fire alarm is not required, they just mean that initiation and that notification. But there still is a reference in the codes that a sprinkler system will transmit a signal out to the central station. That does not mean, if you go back into the codes and it doesn't mean a fire alarm system, that you don't have to transmit those signals out. You still have to transmit the signals off to the public property. It just means if no fire alarm system is required, which is not need for notification or initiation devices, you still need to send the signals out. Okay, now these are some of the things I picked up going through the state of Antal about a month ago. And this is by no means completeness. These are only the things that we saw that maybe just, it'll give you an idea of the implications of not sprinkling in this problem. If you have a group B, anything other than an outpatient. If you have an outpatient clinic, then you've got to have a full fire alarm system, regardless. Okay? It's okay. A group B would be a general office, a restaurant, drugstore, anything that's not an I, which is institutional hospital. E is educational. F is factory. E is probably the most common type of occupancy, but it also has the lowest fire alarm requirements. But if you don't sprinkler, then fire alarm system, or if you do sprinkler, the fire alarm system is not required in the building. Okay. Other than that, group F, the factory or industrial. The fire alarm system is not required when an approved automatic fire extinguisher system is installed throughout the building. So if you're doing a new group F with sprinklers, there's no fire alarm requirements. Now, you still may have to send those water flow signals and the supervisory signals out to the sprinklers. But there's no need for horns and stoves and smoke detectors and all that. This is a biggie, R2. What's an R2? The IBC R2 are apartments, dormitories, boarding houses, fraternities, and sororities. There's an exception to R2. It said that system fire and smoke detectors are not required with automatic fire extinguishing systems installed throughout the building. And actually, the way application, and R2 requires corridor smoke detectors. Those can go away if it's sprinkler. The smoke detectors in the guest room still need to be there. They can either be part of the fire alarm system or not part of it. But yeah, the R2, those corridor smoke detectors go away. Okay, that was all windows and stuff. What happens if you have accessory doors? Group A. One that told me how to go back. Oh, my one up, just stand. A group A, what's that? Okay, fire alarm system is not required to again, same requirement. Overhead. R2. Okay, fire alarm system is not required with an approved automatic fire extinguisher system. Again, the same as new and existing. Okay? And in a high-rise building, which is maybe around here, automatic smoke detectors provided in accordance with this section. Smoke detectors will be detectors of automatic fire extinguishers. The activation of any detectors required by this section will operate the emergency voice communication system. And smoke detectors shall be located in mechanical equipment, electrical transformer, telephone, or similar rooms not provided with sprinkler protection, the elevator machine rooms, and the elevator smoke detectors. That's a biggie, okay, because typically in the uniform building code, you needed smoke detectors in a B high-rise in electrical rooms, storage rooms, mechanical rooms, all of this. Sprinkler or not, we had smoke detectors. Now in the new international fire code, if it's sprinkler, there's no requirements. Mechanical, electrical, transformer, telephone, sprinkler, another significant change under section 905 of the Uniform Building Code, smoke control. This happens a lot in covered walls. We have a smoke control system for smoke exhaust. The automatic control system shall be initiated from its own automatic sprinkler system or from an appropriate zone total coverage smoke detector system. In a lot of covered walls, you see that the beam detectors will be shooting across some of these open spaces, and that would be part of the initiation process for that smoke control system. Under the 2003 Minnesota State Code, high-rise covered wall smoke exhaust system, mechanical smoke exhaust station should be automatically activated on sprinkler water period. So that's a biggie. Title 714, fire extinguishing systems. Automatic fire extinguishing systems shall be connected to the building's fire alarm system, or a fire alarm system is required by another section of this code, or is otherwise installed. This, again, this hasn't changed. If we have a wet or a dry or a free or some type of a fire extinguishing system, those signals need to be connected to the building fire alarm system where the fire alarm system is required by our system. In a building that doesn't have the requirement for a fire alarm system, then obviously it doesn't. So, in review, we wanted to cover 2003 Minnesota State Fire Code changes that affect the sprinkler and fire alarm designs. And again, I just touched on some of the brief ones, but I just want to give you a flavor of some of the changes that occurred in Minnesota for the sprinklering and what happens, how that impacts our fire alarm system. And lastly, why is there one fire alarm design in a building, a different design in an identical building in a certain municipality? Just simply code changes. Because fire alarm is significantly changed for each code cycle. And you may see a building that was built in 1994 that's got a requirement for a lot of those smoke detectors like we talked about in the high rise. And Al may walk into that same type of building that was built in the under the 2003 Minnesota State Fire Code here, so you may not find those same devices there. But that's the reason for that. That the code changes, typically not pull those in. There may be also some concessions that are made during plan review of the AHJ that he may want to put additional smoke detectors down the corridor because he feels that there's some liability or some risk to a certain part of the building. He may not think that he can respond to that part of the building. So he wants to get one of your detection. So under plan review, during design, he may ask for smoke detectors to be provided on that part of the building in the corridor. So you may walk down a building and see detectors going down the corridor and review the Minnesota State Fire Code and say there's nothing in there that requires it. Those are some of the trade-offs that happen. That's why, there's all reasons for it. Yeah. That's it. I told you I'd keep it short, keep it quick. Is there any questions?
I just want to make a comment. What we're beginning to see in the last couple of months is that a lot of people are beginning to use the sprinkler system as the alarm system, and what they're doing, they're zoning the sprinkler system into possibly small zones. So that really drives the cost of the sprinkler system up significantly. What I'm talking about, the place that normally would be divided into 50,000 square foot areas, now is divided into 20,000 square foot areas with feed mains going to every single area so that they know that it's this room or this floor or that floor. And I'm not sure that in the end is really what that was all about. But I'm just saying that I've seen that happening recently.
And I'm not quite sure why that's happening. I've got a couple of theories on why that's happening. And fire alarm systems typically, and I think everybody knows what addressable fire alarm systems are. I mean, you know when the device goes off, you know where it is. And if you zone down some of the sprinkler zones, then obviously you're cutting down the area, that you have to respond to. You know more precisely where that alarm system is. But I was brought up, and I was taught this a long time ago, that a sprinkler system is primarily there for building protection. It's there to go off. It's there to find, suppress the alarm until the fire department responds. A fire alarm system is there for life safety. And the two of them don't co-mingle. I mean, each one has its own intent. The fire alarm system does provide early warning if designed right, and it'll do its job, and then the suppression systems are there as a backup afterwards. Because that sprinkler head that faces 165 degrees is going to be far later activated to that water flow switch than a smoke detector that's just some smoke observation. So, two different systems doing two different things. When both of them are designed well together, they'll provide a good chunk of the fire protection design.
Heard you say that occupancy drives the need for the fire alarm system to be square footage or anything like that?
No, the only square footage requirement would be in a hardwired fire alarm system. Back in the old days, when we used to loop devices on 2-wire circuits, it was a 20,000 square foot area because none of those devices are addressable. So they just wanted to confine those zone boundaries down to 20,000 square feet so that you wouldn't have to dig around and try to find the maximum zone of 20,000. Other than that,
I think height of the building is really not so much square footage, but the height of the building. It used to be like 3 stories more than you need for everything else. Well, it's just a lot of the sizes of the
I know there's that 75-foot requirement that breaks off between a normal B occupancy and B high rise. High-rise is considered.
They're all legal. Well, I got cans.
Can you comment a little bit on, talk a little bit about, sometimes we put those switches together as cameras, switches, right? Can you comment a little bit about You've got a valve header where you've got 4 or 5 valves, you've got dry pipes, and reactions and wet. Which devices can be called together and take back to one point as opposed to which ones need to be separate and having that, what's the best practice?
Well, what we do at FCE is also based on NFPA 72. And a water flow switch, or like we were talking about earlier, gives you a water flow indication of part of the building where water is flowing. It's not necessarily where that water flow switch is. Because that water flow switch may be down in the basement. It's actually monitoring the water zone. So the water flow switch should be separately enunciated so that you know where the water is going to go. Camper switches are more set up for the location. So the camper switch, the water shut-off valve, is a supervisory signal that should tell someone, listen, this water shut-off valve in room 101, down in the basement, is where that valve is, you shut off. Because you want the responding people to go to where the room is, where the valve is. And you've got a room, you've got a number of water shut-off valves all together in that room. There's a limitation, I'm not sure, I think it's as high as 20. We've never gone that far, but you can move those all together at some point. As long as it's an addressable system, programming to the room where those water valves are located. That's important. A lot of times we get out and we'll test this fire alarm installations after a while. They just say water shut-off valve, 3rd floor. That doesn't mean anything. It's going to come up. You want to get the responding to the room where that water shut-off valve is. You got to get that feedback open. That's the difference between water shut-off valve.
You got some system, how do they do that? You got on the list, what? Do that anymore? Valves.
Water shut-off valves?
Yeah.
There's absolutely no reason why, because again, if you set them up as separate points, again, each of those points takes a module, takes an address. Those modules are $200, $300, depending on what it is. So if you set those water shut-off valves on an addressable system as individual points, then it's 200, 200, 200, 200, 200. You can do that. We've seen a lot of systems put up that way. But again, with the cost of the systems and the cost of the square foot that we're constantly talking and challenged by some of the building, that's one of the things that you can do. And it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Why tell them 5 times a water valve? 105. But they should be properly labeled too. That's the other thing too, is a lot of times you go into a room and it's just a mass of valves, you know, and what we put in our specification is that water shut-off valve should be labeled to correspond with the information that's back in the fire alarm system. So that you go down with the information that says water shut-off valve, and all these fire alarm systems set up as points, point 105-202. You want that 105-202 to be labeled downstairs in the valve room, so that if it's not clearly apparent that the valve has been closed, you can see 105-202 where it is. So that's another connection that you have. Anything else? Yes?
What's your interpretation of occupancy versus occupancy?
M being mercantile. I don't know if I can answer that. I don't know. I'd have to go back and check. You know, stores and everything else versus these typically are offices. Not houses. I'd have to go back and check. But you're right.
When is it mandatory under the new code to monitor a sprinkler system off-site?
There's nothing in the fire codes that require that any fire alarm system can be monitored off-site.
Or a sprinkler system.
Sprinkler system, I think, well, in my head, where is required to start monitoring.
There's a certain number of sprinkler heads that you have to monitor.
It used to be, sprinkler heads before, but now they had greater density, greater coverage for each head, a larger space, and now it's bicycle.
There's nothing in the fire code that requires that.
Do you have an occupancy that doesn't even have a fire alarm system, per se, with detection devices, but it is sprinkler? You wouldn't have any kind of notification. That's right. You wouldn't have horn strobe. What would you have? You still have the horn strobe on the outside of the
Yeah. Okay.
and a fire alarm panel.
It does not per se require a fire alarm panel, it would require a UL listed communicator to transfer the signals out to the station. It may not be a fire alarm panel. There's a difference between an nickel dial and a fire alarm panel. If you have to send signals out, without a fire alarm.
There would just be 3 signals going out.
So, and again, you have to check with your AHJ, right? Because different municipalities require a lot more definition of what those signals are. And if you're sending smoke detector signals out, a lot of cities want to know the difference between a smoke detector alarm and a water flow alarm. If it's a water flow alarm, you get a 99% chance that water is running and you've got something going on in that building. It's a smoke detector alarm, unfortunately.
99% chance.
I didn't go anywhere. I didn't go anywhere. But I will say though, that the fire alarm industry is getting a lot better, about the equipment that we're putting out. It's a lot more intelligent and it's installed properly, programmed properly. There's no reason why it's
Hey, Tom, you get a large complex, you say there's no smoke alarm, no strobes. It's a large complex. How do you evacuate the building?
It depends on the type of occupancy it is. If it's an I, a hospital, then there's no general evacuation at all. They just relocate. They go from one smoke department to another smoke department. And they relocate to that area.
That's about manufacturing.
Manufacturing, if it's an F, OSHA really has a lot to say, about the evacuation routes for those types of facilities. You need to have maps posted so many feet,
How do they, when you say it's a large complex, it's down at the far end, they go up the other, nobody knows what's going on. What's going to happen to occupancies like that? Is it something on the inspector system?
I don't know, the majority of that's some type of a paging system, it's a non-supervised paging system, they may rely on that. They may rely on telephones, they may rely on pagers, there's a lot of other facilities that they can use to try to get that evacuation going. But it may not be, and it probably won't be, just a general mass evacuation. It'll be a part of the building that evacuates in the affected area. The non-affected would just stand by, they would wait for something. So it probably wouldn't be such a big mass. Again, depending on the AHJ, he may turn around and say, no, I want everybody out of that building. Then you have to get to some type of emergency preparedness.
A lot of it has to do with what people are able-bodied, say that I can't. You're in a big open environment, there's something that people can see, feel something coming before they're ready. I've heard that said before as far as taking on those systems, some occupancies, sprinklers, people are able to react.
More and more, we're not requiring people to evacuate this picture going. There's a head on the evacuation, water pressure, we heard about that. So we're on this thing, put on this thing.
And that's typically the problem, because again, there's more eyes that are actually watching the entire facility. And that's probably one of your best protections, is just good trained people for what's going on in the facility. And then they have some type of procedure that occurs when something is going on. answer your question, there won't be any horns or strobes. And typically, a lot of factories, it's hard to put in horns and strobes. You know, if you're in a window making factory, you know, and you got a lot of planes and saws and, you got easily 100, 120 decibels flowing through that area. You're not going to get a fire alarm. It's going to drive over. It's just not going to happen.
Strobes,
Could do strobes. Yeah, but again, you got a lot of constructions and, you know, you got a lot of pallets and stuff moving around and dust and everything else. It's sometimes not good.
These sprinkler contractors are buying valves, you know, they come with damper switches built onto them. Could you comment a little bit about whether it's better to have one set of contacts or one set of contacts with regard to flow switches and damper switches? Does it matter to the fire alarm contractor which one grade the other?
I don't think I've ever heard anything from any fire contractor. I think where we've gotten in trouble is where a fire contractor will connect to one set of contacts on that switch, and then another system will come in behind them and connect to the second set of contacts on that switch, and like a building management system. And that's a problem. And unfortunately, the two systems get installed at different times. The fire alarm system is probably the first one in because they're there for occupancy. And then you may have another system come in, or security or building automation, and they pull their wires in the same raceway up to that system. That's been a problem for us.
It's not that they're banned on the second set of contacts, it's the same race.
why is that so tough?
There's some induction problems that can come up, depending on the cleanliness of that building automation cable. And I'm not picking on the building automation, but I'm just going through an experience that I understand 6 months ago, where the building automation system came out of panels, and the 120 volts for those panels was installed in such a way that the outgoing data circuits were laying right next to each other. And we actually had some induction that was coming through on our low voltage wires coming down and actually false alarming over to the fire alarm system. Yeah, and it drove a lot of people nuts for a lot of months until we finally figured that out, because they were blaming it entirely on the fire alarm system. The fire alarm system was the thing that's getting the signals coming out and saying, trouble. You know, well, that's kind of the fire alarm system's problem. It's trouble. Well, you got into it and you finally found out why it was going into trouble, and the fire alarm system was only doing what it's supposed to do. Because the fire alarm system is only supervised when it's out, it's required to be supervised. So it's only doing what it's seeing. When it's seeing either a ground, a potential ground, and it's going back and it's coming back as a trouble and saying, you know, we've got trouble in our fire alarm system. So you have to go back and figure that out. So that's a problem. So we try to piggyback on some of those comments. Anything else? Chairman Cory? No. Okay, great. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Tom. Appreciate, Tom did fill in on rather short notice. We were working hard to get a fire truck plan tour set up for this meeting. And Cory with all the details. Scott and Andy spent a lot of time working on it, trying to get through layers of people and management. Who are we? All these questions. Anyway, we got to the point where we couldn't wait for them to give us an answer. We come up there, we kind of bailed on it. So Tom was a 2-week, can fill the hole for us, so I really appreciate it. With that,